It's either called a dependent sample t-test or a paired sample t-test. You have 2 extra slides on there that are not in here. I added them today to give you kind of a little bit more definition. Okay. Standard formula for the calculation of t assumes that there's no correlation between the groups. Okay. I'm going to give you a little synopsis of correlation. Does anybody know what a correlation is? Similarity or relationship. Okay. I use the idea of boyfriend, girlfriend. There's a relationship. Okay. Relationship starts out, it's wonderful. Okay. It will be a positive relationship. Later on, gets a little ugly. Turns around. Break up. Now you have a negative correlation. Okay. It's about as basic as I can get it to start with. Okay. Understanding that your correlation numbers don't go very far. They're not in the millions, they're not in anything. They go from a positive 1 to a negative 1. Okay? So if I go to the board and I draw a picture of this, okay? And I draw a picture of this, it's just like a number line. Okay? -1 to +1 with 0 being in the middle. Okay? The instance of how, and I'm not going to go into the detail of it, but what you need to know for tonight is direction. So I got a +1 on this side, a 0 in the middle, and a -1 on this side. It can't go any farther on either end. Okay? This in the middle means there's absolutely no correlation. Over here, this is a perfect correlation. And over here, this will be a perfect correlation. You say, how can they both be perfect? Here's the concept for tonight. Okay? Be it that 0 has absolutely no correlation at all. If I was to take a number like 5, 4, 5, okay, on this side it would be positive, there would be no plus sign in front of it. Over here, I have a -0.545. Okay? The major concept for you to remember tonight is that this one and this one is exactly the same in reporting. Next week we'll go over a little detail of how that becomes a negative number compared to the positive number. So this -545 on this side is exactly the same as this, except one is negative and one is positive. And it's all directional on how questions are answered or how your numbers work out. Okay? So if I have a number of -3.4, now there's differences in strength. Okay, that's the other part tonight. You can say slight over here. So let's say it's 200. It'd be slight. In here it could be moderate. And this would be high over here above 7. Okay, near 7, around 7. And it goes the same way though as slight, moderate, and high. If I had a number like 898, you have it's a high positive correlation. Okay, and for tonight, that's what you really need to know. Next week, this will kind of come into, it'll be kind of clearer because we'll be going through correlation, or I could spend an hour and a half tonight talking about correlation and miss the other part. Okay, so in essence, as we go through, you'll understand you're going to get a number, and then we'll look at this, come back to this number line and start to look at it in terms of strength only tonight. And then next week we'll go back over and we'll come back and touch base again and look at it again. Okay? This is a test where we're testing a group of participants. That should be twice, in a pre and a post test. Okay? This is the point where we talk about different kinds of tests. Okay? If you're running a non-experimental test, such as like a survey, okay? You're looking at the perception of something. Okay? It's not going to be a pre and a post. You can do it as a pre and a post, but in most cases you're going to get the survey, you're going to turn it in, and it's one time. It's probably the weakest you can get. Okay? Then you move into this realm where you have a pre and a post test, the experimental. Okay? And in terms of that experimental testing, it can be in a pre and a post. And now when it comes to that level, that's probably the lowest you can get. And then it moves up from there. You can have a an intervention, and then another, and then other pre-tests or subsequent tests before you do the final test. So when you hear something like a 5-year study, this is when they have probably done multiple tests and checks and balances along the way to see if there's improvement after 3 months and 6 months and 9 months and so on and so forth. In here, it's a pre-test, 3 weeks, and a post-test. It's as simple as you can get. Okay? In a classroom setting, in here, I could give you a pre-test to see how much you know, and at the end of the semester, I give you a post-test to see how much you've learned. Okay, and some of your classes do that. Then you look at other things like an activity class where you come in and you lift weights, and you start lifting weights, and you say, okay, my starting weight for the bench press is 185 pounds at the end of the semester. I'm now at 240. Well, now I have X number of percentage of increase. Then I can look at what you're actually doing during the semester. Look at what you've done on a week in, week out basis. Okay, and then go from there. Now, I use that example for a reason. If I'm in a weight training class and I'm going twice a week, okay, and I'm going to take that class, I'm going to do a weight training thing for that period of that, let's say, 15 weeks. Okay, what factors outside of that class can change and be a factor towards your end result? Diet, there you go. What else? Prior injuries. Also injuries during the class time that you're there. What else?
How hard you work out.
How hard you work out. That would be true. Did you change how hard you worked out from that point out? What else?
If you show up.
There you go. That's a good one. If you even show up. What about the person that starts taking the class and then all of a sudden gets piped up and takes the class twice a week, but now works out on his own 2 more times a week? So when you're handing out this test, it's called a confounding factor. When you're running a test like this, confounding factors are the biggest portion of when you see a correlation test being run. Because as a researcher or as a person who is gathering data, okay, I could say, great, I'm doing a great job. I got this great test for the beginning and the end, and then you find out that the guy's been working out 2 more and went out and got a trainer on the side, and he's working out 3 other times a week with the trainer, and all of a sudden his weights go up from 185 to 275, and you think you're the greatest teacher in the world, but he's actually got a teacher on the side. Okay? I think I talked about prayer. Prayer had the confounding variables of you could pray at any moment and not know you're praying because it can be subconscious. Okay? Doing physical therapy, okay? You're told not to walk. Whatever your injury was, you were told not to walk. But you just can't sit around the house and you get out and walk. And all of a sudden you go back and you're stronger and you're feeling better and you've lost a little weight just going to physical therapy when the physical therapist thinks that you're only going to physical therapy and you're resting the rest of the time. But in essence, you went out and you walked an extra mile a day. And you feel better, and your body healed faster, but you don't tell the physical therapist that. So there are every place you go, there are confounding variables. As a professor, there are confounding variables. Are you having a good day am I having a good day as a professor? Are you having a good day as a student? Okay, are you struggling in other areas? Which means you may not come in here bright and bushy-tailed. How many of you have 7 to 9 classes? Okay, had 7 to 9 classes. What's the hardest part of a 7 to 9 class? Staying awake. This was the hardest class to teach from 7 to 9. Holy moly. Even though we had a computer for us, I got to the hands-on as quickly as I could. It was still hard. By 8 o'clock, they were gone. By 8:30, man, I'd already passed my bedtime. Okay? So 4 to 6 works pretty well on this. You're getting to that last part of the day at 6. I see about 5:15, 5:20, kind of fade a little bit. Those are confounding variables for me. How do I get this information to you as quickly as possible and do that? I could go and I can look at those numbers and I can look for a correlation between how many hours you've slept during the week and how many classes you have from 4 to 6 and how many times you feel like you want to fall asleep. It's for some of you it'd be 100. That's the way it would be. Okay, because I know my 4 to 7, my 7 to 10 classes were always a tough one, about 8:30, 9 o'clock. And a lot of you have classes during the day and you have work and you have everything else. So like when I leave here and I get home, I'm ready for bed. My day started at 4:30. I get up and walk my dad. I have to take my dad for a walk for 2 hours before I even go to work, and I got to get everybody up and get going and the whole day. So that 7 to 9 class was just as tough for me. You have to push through, but in the same respect, there's a confounding variable relative to my teaching and relative to your learning. Now, can we find correlations here? Sure. Correlation of not enough sleep or too much work compared to, and those are where the demographics come in to the opposite side of what the data says. Okay? So we're doing a pre and a post test. Definition is the same thing. We're going to assume the relationship or correlation exists between the scores and a person's scores on the post test are partially dependent on his or her pre-test score. Okay? There's an assumption that because you're doing the same test. Now, if you go to do one test at the beginning and a different test at the end, it kind of messes everything up because you can't really say that they're dependent on each other. They're dependent on each other. So we're already going to get it, and I'm going to stop this one right